This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. The Supreme Court will not hear a case involving states pushing to end funding for Planned Parenthood through Medicaid programs. Justices Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Clarence Thomas voted to hear the case, but newly seated Justice Brett Kavanaugh sided with liberal justices. Kavanaugh's decision to pass on the case came as a surprise to some. During his confirmation hearings earlier this year, Democrats argued his appointment would overturn Roe v. Wade. The latest appeal came from cases in Kansas and Louisiana to push Planned Parenthood health centers from their state Medicaid programs. Not hearing the case at the Supreme Court allows lower court rulings to stand. That means Medicaid patients have a right to challenge a state's decision to remove their doctors as a qualified provider. It would have taken 4 Supreme Court justices to agree to hear the case. In his dissent, Justice Clarence Thomas criticized the court for its, quote, particularly troubling decision, arguing the case itself really had nothing to do with abortion. And Martin Cannon is with Thomas More Society and joins us now. So, Martin, abortion activists are considering the Supreme Court's decision a win for women's rights. What's it mean for pro-life supporters?
Well, I don't know how much we can read into it because, of course, the majority that declined to hear the case did not give us an opinion. So I don't really know what's behind it. I haven't had an opportunity to review Justice Thomas's dissenting opinion, and frankly, I'm not familiar enough with the issue to address it intelligently.
Do you think this is an example of what kind of decisions we will see from Kavanaugh when it comes to abortion cases?
I hope not. I like to think that he's kind of a nuts and bolts guy, and that he's got a rationale for his opinion that it was not something to be reviewed. Now, that's having said that, it does have me scratching my head a little because I believe there's a split between the circuits. The 8th Circuit and the 10th Circuit have rendered different rulings on what's a real similar question. So normally that would be a reason for the Supreme Court to hear it. But I'm still going to trust Kavanaugh that he's got a rationale. We might not like the outcome, but that it was a reasonable application of the law. I really don't know.
Now, you're also involved in a case out of Iowa for a proposed heartbeat bill. Can you give us an update on that?
You bet. Last year, both Iowa houses and the governor, Kim Reynolds, signed a law that would prohibit abortions after the child's heartbeat is detected. Planned Parenthood promptly challenged that, and the law is on hold pending the outcome of that litigation. Now, just the other day, we had an argument in the case where Planned Parenthood is trying to throw the statute out without even having a trial. They have based that request on the idea that the Iowa Supreme Court very recently found that there is a fundamental right to abortion under the Iowa Constitution, which of course was news to all kinds of people who know that Constitution and hadn't seen that right in there before. But in any event, Planned Parenthood now thinks that the heartbeat bill is a slam dunk to kill it, but it really isn't true. So we argued that. They say that it'll outlaw almost all abortions in Iowa. Our position is it doesn't really outlaw any of them. It just requires that if a woman wants to have an abortion, she does so promptly before the child reaches this very important milestone, having a heartbeat, something we associate with life. Something that we associate with life on the other end of the spectrum. Under Iowa law, you are dead when your heart stops. And so it does make some sense to sort of bookend life on each end with the same threshold. If we're going to call death what happens when you pass that threshold on the way out, we should call life what happens when you pass that threshold on the way in. So it's a very interesting question.
What do you think is next for heartbeat bills in other states?
Well, I think that the people of America need to understand that if we lose this case in Iowa, it is largely going to be because the Iowa Supreme Court says there's a fundamental right to abortion. And frankly, their ruling puts Iowa back beyond even Roe. Right now, Iowa went from being the most pro-life state in the country, probably by passing this heartbeat bill and a few others, to being a mecca for abortion. on account of the stroke of the pen of the Iowa Supreme Court. Right now, under Iowa Supreme Court law, you can have more right to abortion than anyone else in the country even has under Roe versus Wade. So the reason I say that is because if we lose this case, this heartbeat case, it is going to be because of our Iowa Supreme Court, not nationwide law. So other states should get on the bandwagon, pass their heartbeat bills, and get something on the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. If enough states pass heartbeat bills, it will get considered by the Supreme Court. And I do believe that Roe versus Wade and Casey, its progeny, are on borrowed time. So right. Other states need to do this.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Much appreciate of your time. Movement could soon come on a major criminal justice reform bill. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the Senate will take it up. He told members they should be prepared to stay in session the week following Christmas. It would be the largest sentencing overhaul in decades, and it has bipartisan support. There has been a priority for President Trump and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. He's worked behind the scenes for the last 2 years on this bill. Want to turn now to the president's search for a new chief of staff after news his leading choice doesn't want the job. The vice president's chief of staff, Nick Ayers, has respectfully declined the offer. The president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, may also have an influence on who becomes the president's next choice.
The president will make the right choice for chief of staff when he's ready, and hopefully he'll choose somebody he's got great chemistry with, great relationship with, who will help him navigate the next couple of years.
In other news, tensions between leading Democrats and the president were thick in an afternoon meeting on the budget and border security. The president doubled down on his position, telling Democrats if we don't have border security, we'll shut down the government. Democratic leaders Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer asked the president for another solution. Schumer told him the government shouldn't come to a halt over this dispute. Google CEO Sundar Pichai answered questions from Republican lawmakers about potential bias against conservative views with the internet search giant. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy says Google's business practices may have been influenced by politics. Meanwhile, the committee's top Democrat, Jared Nadler, called the notion of bias a delusion. The hearing also addressed the company's data breach and censorship demands from China. The social media site Tumblr has announced it will begin enforcing a site-wide pornography ban beginning December 17th. The blogging and social sharing platform made the decision after it was removed from the App Store for having graphic depictions of child sexual abuse on its site. In a statement, Tumblr CEO Jeff D'Onofrio said, "We spent considerable time weighing the pros and cons of expression in the community that includes adult content. In doing so, it became clear that without this content, we have the opportunity to create a place where more people feel comfortable expressing themselves." Tumblr has published a list of guidelines to help users better understand what will and won't be allowed. Dawn Hawkins is vice president of the National Center on Sexual Exploitation and joins us now. So, Dawn, what are some changes Tumblr is making with its site to ban pornography?
Yeah, well, after being caught with child pornography on its site and Apple kicking them out of Apple's App Store, Tumblr agreed to get rid of all pornographic content that depicts genitals or frontal female nudity.
Comcast also recently made changes to combat illicit content. Can you tell us about those?
Comcast has tightened its parental controls, made it much more family-friendly, easier for parents to block pornographic content. They've buried a lot of the pornography that they were selling, filtered the types of themes that they were selling. They've made their mobile app free from pornography, created a kids zone that's completely free from pornography, and they're developing a whole suite of family tools that will roll out early next year as well. And this is just really showing this trend of many major corporations that are developing policies to combat pornography, because we're really experiencing a public health crisis. So not only Comcast and Tumblr, but Starbucks also just agreed to filter their Wi-Fi at all of their U.S. chains around the country.
Now, with more companies enforcing stricter internet safety, do you think we will still see we'll see an end to porn altogether?
No, the reality is that we are experiencing public health impacts from pornography, especially as early exposure among youth and the easy access. it will be very difficult to ban pornography altogether, but we need to be much more aware of the harms and the impact it's having on individuals, families, and society. And it's very helpful to see that it's not just on parents' shoulders any longer to protect their families and kids from exposure, but corporations and governments are also stepping up to address the public health concerns. 11 states have declared pornography a public health concern as well. So many more are waking up to the harms.
How do all these bans help fight even more extreme issues like human trafficking, especially children?
Mm-hmm. Well, pornography is also linked to increased demand for child sexual abuse and for sex trafficking. Many individuals who watch pornography regularly seek to act out what they're viewing, thereby increasing demand for these other societal ills. And so we know that if we want to curb child sexual abuse, or if we want to curb sex trafficking, addressing one of the root factors, pornography, is a tremendous step in combating those societal harms.
Critics argue that this ban signals the end of user-generated content on social media platforms. How do you respond to that?
Well, many other platforms don't allow pornography. Facebook has been really good at it. Instagram tries to take pornography off. Not that those places are completely safe from it, but almost every other social media platform says no to hardcore pornography, except Tumblr. For many years, Tumblr and Twitter have defended it and allowed it. And so this is a welcome change, especially as we know that it's contributing to increased demand for child sexual abuse images, for sex trafficking. It's breaking up families. It's infecting young men, and there's an increasing sexual dysfunction. It's hurting relationships. I mean, the list of harms goes on. And so times are changing as companies and mainstream public is waking up to the harms.
All right, Dawn Hawkins with the National Center. Thank you so much. We much appreciate your time. Members of the Israeli police and army are still searching for a Palestinian gunman who shot 7 Israelis in a drive-by shooting near the town of Afra Monday. The shooting seriously injured a pregnant woman and her baby. Both are in critical condition after the baby was delivered as a result of that attack. Chaim Silberstein is the father of the woman. He is also the founder of Keep Jerusalem, and he talked with our Scott Ross about the future of Jerusalem.
Do you see a good future ahead or no?
Zechariah chapter 14 talks about what's happening here on the Mount of Olives. There'll be an earthquake here. There'll be a war. There'll be all kinds of unnatural things that are happening here.
That's yet to happen.
That's yet to happen in the future. But Zechariah ends the prophecy by saying, and Jerusalem will dwell secure. The question is how we will get there. The thing that is guaranteed to bring peace to Jerusalem is keeping Jerusalem united under Israeli sovereignty. And that certainly is the prelude to hopefully the incredible event that we hope and pray will happen later, which will be ultimate peace both to Jerusalem and the world.
Silberstein and his wife are keeping vigil for their daughter and grandchild and asking for prayers for both of their recoveries. After the break, how a serious brain injury is not only affecting football players, but military veterans as well.
God Almighty is a God of blessing. He always wants to bless his people. But how do you get that blessing? And what principles will unlock that secret?
In Miraculous Blessings, Pat Robertson shows you how to open the floodgates of God's awesome blessings in your life.
In order to have a blessing, you've got to be blessable.
Discover what the Bible has to say about God's covenant of blessing, the laws of blessing, and what are the hindrances to the blessings of God.
The words of Jesus, they are as valid as the law of gravity, and if we follow those laws, we will be blessed.
You'll see amazing true stories of everyday people whose lives were rescued and transformed by God's miraculous blessings.
But even the doctors acknowledged that this had to be a miracle.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com to become a CBN partner and get miraculous blessings today.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Welcome back. The Centers for Disease Control announced 2018 has been a record number of mysterious paralyzing illnesses in children. Medical experts say it is still not clear what's causing the children to lose the ability to move their face, neck, back, and arms or legs. The condition is called acute flaccid myelitis, or AFM. Symptoms occur about a week after a child had a fever and respiratory illness. The condition has been linked to polio, but investigators ruled that out. No one has died from that rare disease this year, but it was blamed for one death last year, and it may have caused others. CTE is a brain injury associated with repeated hits to the head. Its victims can become violent and even point to signs of murder, as so depress some of them that they take their own lives. Most people associate this condition with football, but new studies show they are actually finding it in brains of military veterans exposed to explosions, but who had not suffered a concussion. Dr. Bennett Omalu was one of the first doctors to raise awareness about it. He says hits to the head damage the area of the brain responsible for decision-making and judgment.
It could present with changes in personality, mood disorders, becoming a drug addict, an alcoholic. You have a much higher risk of engaging in self-harm, attempting suicides, and even committing suicides.
CTE can only be confirmed after death, and while there is not yet a cure, scientists are developing a test to diagnose it in the living, which could then lead to treatment. CBN medical correspondent Lori Johnson is here. So, Lori, we dive into your interview with Dr. Omalu. Let's talk about that first story first, where these illnesses come from, this new paralyzing illness.
That's right. And this is so scary for parents. And, you know, even one childhood death, one childhood illness, especially a very serious one like this, is frightening. But let's put it into perspective. The chance of your child getting this is less than 1 in 1 million. Nevertheless, let's talk about it. They think that it's being caused by a virus, probably the enterovirus. They're not sure, but they think that that's what's causing this. A lot of kids get enterovirus and then recover from it, but some of them, it looks like this goes on. We know that this is affecting the gray matter in the spinal cord, which controls our muscle movement. So parents, be on the lookout if your child suddenly loses the ability to move his or her arms or legs. But again, it's probably caused by another virus. So one way to prevent against it is to make sure your child doesn't get a virus in the first place. And the best way to do that is hand washing. We talk about it all the time. Hand washing. Absolutely. It's so boring. Make sure that your kids are keeping his or her hands clean, keeping dirty hands out of the nose and the ears and other places where those germs can enter the body. And then keeping their immune system strong. But avoiding sugar and getting all those wonderful nutrients that we find in vegetables and getting plenty of sleep.
Oh, yes. Now, we know that you interviewed Dr. Omalu. Besides football players and soldiers, researchers believe CTE is affecting other people?
That's right. Wow. And the researchers believe that a lot of people have CTE and don't realize it. We know that the symptoms are things like rapid mood swings, violent, aggressive behavior, depression, suicide. And these are symptoms that look like PTSD. And we know that some loving family members donated the brains of former soldiers to the CTE Brain Center, and the investigators looked at their brains and found CTE and thought, wow, this is weird. These are not football players. They had PTSD symptoms, but it turned out to be CTE. So now we're thinking that bomb blasts in the absence of concussion can cause this, but also we know that hits to the head, the youngest person to ever have CTE was an autistic child, age 17, and he sadly would often beat his head up against the wall. So we know that hits to the head in the home can cause CTE, and sadly this is pointing the arrows towards domestic violence, kids, and adults who are being repeatedly hit in the head, and then also shaken too, because we know that the brain being battered around inside the skull can also cause CTE. So again, domestic violence, a very serious issue. If you are being hit in the head or any other place for that matter, you can get help from the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and that number is on our website. And just one more thing, I interviewed Dr. Amalo. He had so many wonderful things to say about CTE, about football, domestic violence, and that entire interview is going to be on my Healthy Living program tonight at 9:30 Eastern on the CBN News channel, and you can watch that. If you don't have it in your area, just go to our website, cbnnews.com.
You got it. They'll find it. Thank you so much, Lori.
My
Much
pleasure.
appreciated. Still ahead, hope in the midst of persecution. See how this group of believers is looking to the early church to stand strong.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible, because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
We had 4 jobs that didn't go right, but we didn't waver in our faith.
That's when God put on my heart that we needed to do the well.
Within a couple of days, we got an insurance refund check that we had no idea was coming.
And here we are, this year, it's just boom.
You go out and help other people and you get rewarded for it.
Get Pat Robertson's latest teaching, Miraculous Blessings.
In recent years, the church in the Middle East has endured some dark days, but some believe the lives of believers today are reflecting the heroes and heroines of the past in the place where Christianity was born. Chris Mitchell brings us the story from Jerusalem.
Across the Middle East, Christians and the church have suffered terrible persecution, yet there is still optimism here.
I see the church is standing and standing strong with all of the difficulties and with all of the atrocities and all the persecution.
Egyptian-born Yvette Isaac believes that's because they're continuing the testimony of the early believers.
I really believe every day a new page of the book of Acts is being written.
And Isaac wants the church in the West to know what's happening here.
There are brothers and sisters, Christian brothers and sisters who are living there. And if it wasn't for them, first, we will not hear about Christianity in the West. Because of the church in the Middle East, Christianity spread all over the world.
Yet she says the pressure on Christians has been enormous.
That's where it's all started. And the enemy's focus is to destroy it. The enemy's focus is to empty the Middle East from Christianity. So he's putting all of this pressure. And we have seen all kinds of pressure under the people.
Isaac hosts a television program to the Middle East, and she believes Christian media can play a big role to help Christians.
The church needs to know the truth. The Christian media needs to air and to show the world the stories from there. If we just depend on the secular media, we will get what's their agenda for the world to hear. But awareness is very important. That's why we have many clips of Christian people that they suffer and they tell their stories.
One of the stories she tells are the Christians who suffered under ISIS.
We go to Iraq and to Syria, and we go to these places, and we try to empower the girls that they came out of captivity. Christians in Syria and in Iraq, they don't want to speak too much. Probably it's a fear, but when we go there, they open up, and they feel like they can open up and tell us their stories. So we share their stories after their permission to the world.
She tells one story of an Orthodox priest and an evangelical pastor.
An Orthodox priest told me, you know, when there was no water and there are only few drops of water left, I would rather divide it with the evangelical pastor, because I know if we both live, we're going to be more powerful together. If I live and he dies, I'm weaker.
She hopes each part of the body of Christ will do their part.
What am I called to do? Especially in the Western world. The Western church needs to understand the importance of the existing of Christians in the Middle East at this time.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up, how Christian music artist Lauren Daigle saw God move when she visited a children's hospital in Florida.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Singer Lauren Daigle visited several young patients at a Florida hospital for children in Orlando. Daigle posted about the encounter with one of the patients on her Instagram. She says Gabriel, who had half of his brain removed when he was 6 months old, lit up the entire hospital with joy that would shake your bones. Daigle said that night she went home and prayed, "Lord, make me more like Gabriel." That is going to do it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.